A few weeks ago, I met a guy who offered some services I was looking for. And very quickly we started talking about a possible collaboration. He was from Ethiopia. We exchanged contact information, and he gave me his handle on a popular messaging app. However, when I searched for his profile on the messaging app, I was met with a surprise. Instead of the face I expected, I saw something else. Some sort of romantic scene straight out of a movie. Intrigued, I told him that I could not find his face, and he told me that it was his profile. He explained that the picture was from one of his favorite shows, a K-drama. I was not familiar with the expression K-drama, so I decided to do some research. As I delved deeper, I discovered that many people talked about it on YouTube and Google, and that it was very popular among women and Gen X. That hype made me want to learn more about this trend. A few minutes later, I noticed that Korea became one of the most prolific nations in cinema during this last decade. They have been able to promote a positive image of themselves and spread their culture and values through numerous media using cinema, series, technology, and even music with K-pop. In my mind, South Korea had always been a country overshadowed by the threat of its northern neighbor and the ubiquitous presence of its tech giant, Samsung. But as I began to explore the world of K-dramas, I discovered a captivating culture that had quietly spread its influence across the globe. From technology to music, its cultural exports had made their way to all corners of the globe, even to Africa. And what struck me most was that people there were not only aware of South Korean culture, but they appreciated it and respected its people. This appreciation was born not out of violence or political influence, but from the simple act of sharing stories and experiences. And that's what is called soft power. Soft power is a term coined by political scientist Joseph Nye in the 1980s to describe the ability of a country to influence others through attraction and persuasion, rather than through coercion or the use of force. It is a subtle and often overlooked aspect of international relations, but it is becoming increasingly important in today's interconnected world. At its core, soft power is about building relationships and creating positive associations with a country or its values, culture, history, and policies. It can be exercised through cultural diplomacy, education, and media, as well as through economic and political cooperation. One of the key advantages of soft power is that it allows countries to achieve their goals without resorting to military force or economic sanctions. This can be especially important in an era of globalization, which has been marked by increasing interdependence among countries since the 1990s. The use of force can have unintended consequences and can potentially lead to blowback or backlash. But soft power is not just a tool for governments. It can also be exercised by individuals, businesses, and non-governmental organizations. For example, a musician or artist can use their fame and influence to promote a particular cause or message, while a company can use its reputation and social responsibility efforts to improve its image and win support for its products or policies. So why am I talking about soft power? In a world where the balance of power is shifting and traditional forms of influence are becoming less effective, soft power has the potential to play a crucial role in shaping global relations. It can be used to build trust and cooperation, reduce tensions and conflicts, and promote mutual understanding and dialogue, or even fix injustices and improve the condition of populations. But soft power is not a panacea. It requires patience, consistency, and a long-term commitment to building relationships and prove that your solution benefits everyone. It can also be difficult to measure and quantify, which can make it challenging for governments and other actors to allocate resources and assess the impact of their efforts. Despite these challenges, the importance of soft power cannot be denied. As the world becomes more interconnected and interdependent, the ability to influence others through attraction and persuasion rather than violence will only become more valuable. As such, it is so important for African governments, businesses, and individuals to understand the power of soft power and to use it effectively in shaping their future. With the numerous challenges African countries have to face, the use of soft power can be an easier way to improve their conditions. But this requires a long-term commitment, resources, and a willingness to engage with and listen to other nations and cultures. African countries must also be aware of the challenges and limitations of using soft power and work to overcome them in order to effectively leverage their unique cultures, history, and talents. Great example of soft power in the world. One of the best examples of the use of soft power is probably Japan. Japan has been a prominent player in the use of soft power in international relations. They have achieved this through various means such as its cultural exports, economic aid, and international cooperation. But Japanese pop culture, or Cool Japan, is probably the most significant contributors to the country's soft power. We are all familiar with anime, manga, and video games, who have gained widespread popularity globally, and the Japanese government has capitalized on it by promoting them as a means of introducing Japanese culture to the world. This is to me the perfect example of Japan's influence in the world. Most people can't necessarily locate Japan on a map, but they all have heard of at least a Japanese anime, a video game. They implemented a lot of who they are, or at least how they want to be perceived by the world. They even introduced their history and culture in these media, leading to the whole world knowing and being passionate with such topics that are usually perceived as boring. These factors alone are enough to fuel an obsession and love and respect for Japan in millions of people in the world, leading to a true boom in tourism in the country, which alone contributes to the increasing of Japan's economy. For example, by exporting their cultures overseas, Japan and Korea have been increasing their cultural attractiveness. Squid Game recently became the most viewed show on Netflix, Parasite won an Oscar, and BTS's success is bringing at least $5 billion to South Korea every year. Today, 77% of Americans have a favorable impression for South Korea, which is more than their traditional allies like the UK, Australia, and France. It proves that seeing a country in a good light brings many advantages. It is useful to a country, its economy, and its people. In an age where war is condemned, soft power is the might. So, the kind of image we tie to the names Japan and South Korea is usually very positive. Soft power in Africa. What comes to your mind first when you think of Africa? I want you to pause this video and write it in the comment section before watching. I need to see your honest opinion. In many cases, since colonization, African countries have historically been seen as weak and dependent on external nations. The continent is seen as a place to go help, rather than a net positive to the world, despite the fact that in reality the world is dependent on Africans' resources. The image promoted does not show Africa as a place of opportunities, ideas, and innovations. Instead, it is linked to poverty and lack, and this benefits those who want to exploit the continent. A very good example of this is during the pandemic. Everyone was talking about how to help Africa, even before helping themselves, something that increased suspicions among Africans. It showed how the world perceived the continent, a place with children who can't think for themselves. And historically, it is even worse. When people talk about African history, they tend to start it with colonization and slavery. Most people associate Africans with these concepts, as if Africans waited for Europeans to colonize them in order to start existing. If you are an ancient member of this channel, you already know that it is not the case. We proved countless times that Africa was the cradle of civilization, of writing, science, and even of agriculture, since Africans who settled in the Levant and then came back inside the continent are the first farmers. But despite all these evidence, the world's perception of the African continent and its people is very bad. And this is not a coincidence. All this is due to numerous reasons, like a lack of power in general, but not only. In this video, I will focus on the lack of soft power of African countries, especially towards the cultural side of it. Why do African countries have a soft power deficiency? Well, this is a very deep topic, and I will try my best to provide you some answers that I think are the most relevant, especially in our historical and cultural contexts. To me, soft power is similar to your reputation, or to the image of an entity. In other words, its perception by its peers. But a reputation is not necessarily something that you control, and it is not necessarily true. For example, The current global perception of ancient Egypt is that of a civilization built by Europeans and Middle Eastern people who settled in North Africa, and that those they call the true Africans didn't have anything to do with it except being slaves in it. Or that if these builders were Africans, they were completely distinct phenotypically from the other indigenous inhabitants from the south. This is the image of ancient Egypt, but it is not true. Now we should wonder, why do we have that perception of that ancient African civilization? Well, one of the main reasons behind that is the lack of soft power of indigenous Africans. They are not in charge of their history, thus their image and reputation. The history of a people has an impact to its reputation. Kemet is in Africa, but those who control its narrative and thus shape its global perception are not even Africans. That image is shaped through foreign movies, documentaries, and art. And since the machine is very powerful, Africans can't really do anything about it. For example, Ridley Scott, director of the last blockbuster about ancient Egypt, Exodus Gods and Kings, when asked about why he used an all-white cast to play the characters, responded, "I can't mount a film of this budget, where I have to rely on tax rebates in Spain, and say that my lead actor is Mohammed so-and-so from such and such. I'm just not going to get it financed." So the question doesn't even come up. This says a lot about who controls and who shapes the world's perception of Africa. They don't care about the truth. They create what pleases them, and most people are not even aware of it and take it as truth. Ancient Egypt is probably the greatest civilization in history, and those who can claim its ownership receive a major boost in terms of image, thus they significantly increase their soft power. And as you can see, it is not Africans despite the fact that it is a true indigenous African civilization. This is one of the main reasons why the West fights so hard to convince the world that the ancient Egyptians came from out of the continent, despite the fact that I have shared numerous videos and studies proving that the original Egyptians were Nubians or Black African. For example, that same foreign soft power decided to attribute to Africans an image related to slavery and poverty. So today, when people talk about African history, they separate the North that has been invaded multiple times from the southern regions. All these separations have no true base historically, but they contribute to the theft of Africa's greatness, which is its extremely positive image due to its indigenous people's accomplishments, thus its soft power. The separation contribute to the creation of an alternative history that gives foreigners the credit of Africans' accomplishments, stripping Africans from their soft power. What are the challenges and limitations preventing Africans from truly using their soft power? One of the reasons why African countries lack soft power is the fact that they are not in charge of it. But it's more complex than that. The other reason is that most Africans are not even aware of that concept of soft power. Thus, they can't care about it, which allows other nations to do whatever they want with the African image. But even if they were aware of it and wanted to act on it, they would not necessarily be able to do so because of numerous factors. And one of the reasons is the lack of resources. Despite being extremely rich, many African countries have limited budgets and infrastructure, which makes it difficult to invest in cultural diplomacy, education, and other soft power initiatives. This can be especially challenging in the face of competing priorities, such as addressing health and security needs. But that lack is not entirely due to their deficiencies, but also to many external reasons that we will discuss later in this video. Soft power provides an opportunity to assert your own influence and shape your own destiny. It allows you to get some respect from your peers, and which leads to signing better deals by leveraging your unique cultures, history, and talents. A good example of the impact of a soft power deficiency is the treatment of Africans all over the world. Even in the most remote areas, Africans are treated poorly, no matter where they go. But why? These people don't even know them personally, but they still treat them poorly. It is due to the negative image that has been associated to Africans in general. That bad reputation crafted by the West for centuries, and now, all it takes is to look like an African to be treated poorly. But despite the improvements in that sector that occurred lately, there are still constraints related to divergent ideologies and geopolitics. It's in the interest of those who have been oppressing and exploiting that continent and its population to prevent them from gaining more influence and speak for themselves. This leads to misinformation campaigns, smear campaigns, gang stalking, and character assassination campaigns, or simply assassinations, when it's about specific individuals trying to change that situation. The purpose is to prevent Africans from being able to tell their truth, do what is in their interests, and show the world who they really are. Due to that, there is a lack of visibility and recognition of African history, cultures, and traditions abroad. Many African countries have rich and diverse cultures, but these are often overlooked or misunderstood by the international community. But this has not always been the case. Africa's historically attractive soft power. For the majority of human existence, Africa has been a center of the world. The ancient Greeks referred to it as the land of the first men, and its people were considered blessed. Many people are unaware that Africa was the birthplace of art, and it has been known for its exceptional artworks and architecture. However, most of these precious artworks have been stolen by Europeans and are now kept in their museums. It has been known for its spirituality. According to ancient Greeks, their gods would feast with Africans when they came to Earth. African priests were instrumental in teaching other priests from civilizations such as Greece and Rome for its science, knowledge, and medicine. Imhotep was known to Europeans as the god of medicine, for example, and he was an African. Africa's values have also been recognized by other cultures. The Greeks referred to them as the blameless Ethiopians, and even the Arab explorer Ibn Battuta, after visiting West Africa, admitted that the indigenous people had admirable values. Moreover, Africa's military might has a rich history. The first kings emerged from within the African continent. However, today, Africa is known for the opposite of all this. So, what happened? In a world where perception is power, controlling how others view your enemies can be a powerful tool in gaining an advantage. Unfortunately, this is precisely what has happened to Africa. Due to a negative image perpetuated by Western media, the continent and its people are often not taken seriously, and their suffering is often ignored. This lack of soft power is not solely the result of African deficiencies, but an active effort by Western nations to maintain the status quo and continue exploiting the continent's abundant natural resources. It started with the continent's invasion and got worse with colonization and slavery, followed by neocolonialism. However, Africa's potential is tremendous, and if it were to live up to this potential, it could disrupt the exploitative relationship between the continent and the Western world. The key to achieving this lies not only in increasing soft power, but also in reversing the negative reputation that has been unfairly cast upon Africa during these centuries of oppression. By doing so, the world may finally recognize the continent's true value and put an end to the exploitation that has been going on for far too long. So, we see that it is not enough to want to improve or increase your soft power. You must also be able to end any type of negative reputation that has been thrown at you by your opponent. Are there examples of attempts to fix that deficiency? There have been some African attempts to improve that situation through history. For example, South Africa has used cultural diplomacy and education as key tools of soft power. The country has established cultural exchange programs and music and art festivals to promote its culture and traditions abroad. Additionally, South Africa has invested in education and training programs to create a more skilled and educated workforce, which has helped to attract foreign investment and boost economic development. And today, the country is the first African country to have been invited to integrate the BRICS. Evidence that its soft power was descendant. There is also Morocco, which has a long history of using soft power, particularly in the realm of cultural diplomacy. The country has established cultural centers and festivals, such as the Marrakesh International Film Festival, to promote its culture and traditions abroad. Morocco has also used education as a tool of soft power by investing in scholarships and exchange programs for students and professionals from other countries. On the other hand, there are also examples of African countries that have struggled to effectively use soft power. For example, Zimbabwe has faced significant challenges in using soft power due to its political and economic instability. The country's reputation has been damaged by smear campaigns through accusations of human rights abuses, corruption, and economic mismanagement, which has made it difficult to create positive associations and foster mutual understanding with other countries. Many of these campaigns occurred when the government's policies went against Western interests. In other words, the country was oppressed because they tried to break the status quo and have a genuine development. These are the effects of geopolitics. Another example is in Sudan, which has also faced significant challenges in using soft power due to its history of conflict and instability. The country has struggled to attract foreign investment and create positive associations with other countries due to its reputation for human rights abuses and political instability. Despite the fact that the Great Sudan, both south and north, are the center of the earliest African civilization that gave birth to ancient Egypt, the problems in that country are due to external factors like invasions and Western countries' interests in that territory. So, things are more complex than we tend to think. These are just a few examples of the challenges and limitations of using soft power in African countries, as well as some examples of successful and unsuccessful attempts. We see that a weak soft power and bad reputation can deprive a country of good opportunities. The world's perception of a people contributes to the way they are treated in the community. It defines if they deserve empathy or not. A good example of this is the case of Ukraine. Most people were shocked when they noticed how the West reacted to the conflict, while they did not care about the numerous other wars that are occurring in other parts of the world. And this is one of the reasons why African countries struggle. Due to their bad image, most people don't feel any empathy for them, and this can even lead to Africans not having empathy for themselves. The destruction of the African image led to a complete dehumanization of the African population. With a better image, many of these issues would not exist simply because the world would care and understand that it is unacceptable. Overall, it is important for African countries to understand the importance of soft power and to use it effectively in shaping global relations, but this requires a long-term commitment and resources. That's why we must raise awareness about this. There are numerous ways to impact soft power positively. It may not be a panacea, but it encompasses all aspects of a society. And an effective soft power strategy must involve many aspects of a society's identity. For example, on this channel, our tagline is Rebranding Africa. We chose it because we noticed that there were many issues related to Africa's image. It didn't match its true identity, especially when it is about history. So, we decided to contribute to Africa's soft power by educating the world about its true history using many outlets, by bringing real facts, and using great visuals. Something that did not exist. Many of the achievements of Africans have been either attributed to foreign forces, destroyed, or blatantly damaged to hide the greatness of the indigenous people of that continent. It's our way to fight what the mainstream is doing through its movies, with the slave, sportsmen, gang members, and more negative tropes or narratives which contribute to damaging the global reputation of that people in the world. For example, most people are very comfortable with Africans playing slaves and servants in movies, but as soon as a black character has an empowering role, it becomes problematic. We still experience it today. It is just a symptom of the damages done to the image of Africans. In people's minds, inferiority is what suits the best to the concept of African. It is not related to the truth, but that's what most people are comfortable with. So, everything we do on this channel is in perfect alignment with our purpose. We recreate the faces of historical figures with more accuracy, and we promote a more positive and accurate view of Africa. That's our way to contribute to Africa's soft power. It contributes to improving the continent's reputation all over the world. But it's not the only way to do it. Each one of us can contribute to this in his specific field of activity. Identify what you can bring to the table and do it the best you can, and keep in mind that you are representing Africa. One of the key ways that African countries and citizens can use soft power is through cultural diplomacy. By promoting their great history, cultures, and traditions abroad, African countries can create positive associations and foster mutual understanding and respect. This can be done through various means, such as cultural exchange programs, music, art festivals, movies, documentaries, and other educational initiatives. Education is an important aspect of soft power for African countries. By investing in education and training programs, African countries can create a more educated and skilled workforce, which can help to attract foreign investment and boost economic development. Additionally, education can be used as a tool for diplomacy, as it can help to promote mutual understanding and cooperation between countries. African countries can also use soft power in their economic and political relations with other nations. By building strong economic partnerships and engaging in political dialogue and cooperation, African countries can demonstrate their value as partners and create positive associations with other nations. This can help to reduce tensions and conflicts and promote mutual understanding and cooperation. By using soft power effectively, African countries can assert their own influence on the global stage and significantly shape their own destiny. With a long-term commitment to building relationships and leveraging their unique cultures and talents, African countries will create a brighter future for themselves and our world. To conclude this video, I will say that our world is not rainbows and sunshines. There are real battles, and Africans are very well aware of it. But in order to solve many of these issues, they must be aware of the silent battles of this world. Because these silent battles are the keys to solve many of their more visible problems. And soft power is one of these silent battlefields. The poor image of the continent contributes to many of its issues. It creates a vicious cycle, with negativity bringing more negativity. The destruction of the image of Africa led many members of its diaspora to overlook it. While Africa needs her most competent children to care and enter that battlefield to change things. And on the other hand, other countries don't want to deal with Africans when it is about important projects that could greatly benefit both parties, because they don't necessarily respect nor value them. Instead, their approach is usually to try to exploit them, and this is once again due to Africa's weak soft power. What little positive reputation Africa has at the moment is related to music, dance, entertainment, but nothing particularly serious. Some parts of this reputation are remnants of colonization, but on the whole, most of it exists by accident. It's not as if there is a real system built to promote these aspects of African cultures, as we see in Korea, for example. The goal should be to reconnect with the historically attractive soft power of Africa mentioned above, because that is what Africa is supposed to be. To address this issue, the first step is to acknowledge and become conscious of the deficiency. Next, we must unite and ensure that all negative images promoted by foreign nations, which can damage all Africans' reputation, are ended. Following that, a long-term plan and system must be created based on the sectors we wish to develop, with the goal of targeting and resolving the issue. Additionally, it is crucial to establish a mechanism for identifying talent within the African population and investing in them. This involves building effective teams and institutions, as well as implementing an education system that equips the next generation with the skills and knowledge necessary to sustain progress. This effort must become a part of our culture and not just a short-lived experience limited to a single generation. I hope that this video will serve as a wake-up call, reminding us that while the continent faces numerous challenges, we must not neglect the importance of developing a strong soft power. True soft power requires both inner and outer work, and without that alignment, it is merely a house of cards that will collapse at the first gust of wind. Therefore, regardless of the project or field of activity, discipline, order, honesty, and a clear vision are necessary to achieve success. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you found this video informative and interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think about soft power. Is it important? Should Africa invest more in that? Thanks for watching Mr. Imhotep's channel, and see you in the next video.